Hey everyone, just wanted to make a quick video on the changes to the ABSD that has just been released. Okay, so Singaporean citizens and PR looking to buy your first property, no changes at all, nothing to worry about. If you're looking to buy your second or third property, it's going to have some change. There's going to be some changes. But I'm not going to dwell too much on these changes. It's not going to affect the market too much, in my opinion. What I do think is more important is actually this three segment over here. So foreigners actually have a 30% increase. They now have to pay 60% ABSD to buy a residential property in Singapore. And entities 35 to 65. Trustees, pretty interesting, used to be zero prior to 2021. And yet they actually increased from 35% to 65%. What I do think is worth mentioning is that there are no changes to the ABSD payable by the developers. So this means that this cooling measure is actually very skewed towards the demand side and nothing towards the supply side. So for some context, right, if let's say there's an increase in ABSD payable by the developers, that is going to discourage developers from bidding for land, and then also discourage them from buying en bloc developments. Then this in turn is going to reduce the supply in the market. And when there's low supply, it's not going to help with stabilizing the prices. So I just want to go through some of the reasons why I think the government is actually coming up with this preemptive measure, and why is it so targeted towards the foreigners, and also how it's going to affect us, the property market in general. One of the example that I actually pulled out is that this 4-bedder in Nassim Park Residences selling at record high of 4,000 plus PSF. So if let's say there are more and more articles of rich foreigners buying residential property in Singapore at record high of 4,000, close to 5,000 PSF, 4,000 plus 5,000, with more and more transactions like that, is going to shift the sentiment, and potentially, right, foreigners who are looking to buy properties in Singapore, they're going to be ready to accept this kind of PSF. And that's not good for the property market in general. We don't want to see this 4,000, 5,000 PSF as a norm. And this is going to really move the prices a lot. So to prevent this from happening, I think the increase from 30% to 60% for foreigners in terms of ABSD is going to serve as a demand pause, meaning these foreigners are going to pull back on their purchase and think twice about whether this is something that is worth their investment or not. This is one of the ways that I think the government is trying to slow down price movement in Singapore. So another reason why I think the government is coming up with this cooling measure is that the new launches that has been released for the last couple of months has been doing pretty well. The latest one being Tembusu Grands, selling at 50% on launch day. That's something that I guess the government is pretty worried about, especially, right, if it comes to this particular project that's coming up in the second half of this year. So the former Fuji Xerox Towers, CDL actually bought over this, and then it's going to redevelop, and there's going to be residential units in this development. Freehold, which is super rare when it comes to Tanjong Pagar in particular. So, and typically people who are buying this kind of properties are actually foreigners. Case in point, right, Marina One Residences, one of the more popular new launch back in the day for District 1, foreigners actually take up quite a huge proportion, 30+%, right? So judging by the performance of the new launches lately, I guess the government is sort of worried that if let's say they don't do anything about the ABSD, and a Freehold District 1 development comes out and is 50% sold, it's going to cause quite a bit of unhappiness, and prices are going to be quite high, because they're probably going to launch at high 3,000 to 4,000 PSF. So how is this ABSD going to affect Singapore property market in general? Firstly, I think the one that's going to be, firstly, I think new launches and resale properties in the OCR and RCR are still going to be pretty strong because they're predominantly bought by Singaporeans. So we can see from Tembusu Grand, about 90% of the buyers are Singaporeans, while 10% are PR and foreigners from other countries. I would say the demand is still going to be strong for RCR and OCR region. So I do think that CCR will be impacted to a certain extent. In the past 1 year, there has been a trend of people buying CCR properties in hope that they can sell it more affluent foreign buyers, right? And now that ABSD is 60% for these foreigners to come in, I would say that the exit strategy of this group of people has become a little bit more blurry. Those who have already bought into the CCR projects, they probably wouldn't be able to sell their properties in the next 3 years anyway. It doesn't make any investment sense to sell off the property even before the seller stamp duty ends on the 3rd year. So it's going to be quite a laggard effect in terms of the CCR. As for those people who are looking to buy into CCR properties with that same exit plan, I would say they're going to pull back on that, and that's really going to slow down quite a bit. Long-term wise, I do think that this is just a demand pause, right? Foreigners who are really affluent and looking to park their money in a safe haven like Singapore, they would probably still do so. They just have to take some time to accept that this is now the new barrier of entry, new business cost to be accepted when you want to park your money in a safe place like that. It's going to slow down for a bit, but once this has been digested by the market, it may probably still come back. So it's not a long-term solution for sure. Last but not least, I always like to bring us back to the fundamentals of Singapore's property market. So referring to the Financial Stability Review from the MAS in 2022, foreigners and companies actually take up a very, very small proportion of the entire Singapore property market in general. And since this cooling measure is targeted towards the foreigners and companies, this is not going to impact much. And to be honest, Singaporeans and PR, after buying your first property, it's more than likely that you're not going to buy a second property and be willing to pay that ABSD. So increasing that ABSD is just going to eliminate those who are still affluent enough to pay that 17% and trying to see if they're still willing to pay that 20% or not. Okay, so that's all from me, and thank you for listening.